Chapter 7. Music. Teaching me about and getting me involved in the worship of Ganesha was part of Vimalananda's grand design for my development. As he explained, our method is very systematic. First, you worship Ganesha at the Muladhara chakra. Then he gives you the permission and the know-how to worship his mother, Ma, who takes form with the help of your Kundalini shakti. Ma teaches you how to worship her grand consort, Lord Shiva, at the Agnya chakra, and once you achieve Shiva, he will take you to Vishnu and one of his forms, Jesus, Rama, Narayana, or, if you want it and you are destined for it, Krishna in Goloka. Vimalananda was an expert musician, both vocal and instrumental, and many mornings I sat quietly for hours listening to him practice, sometimes accompanying him on the tanpura. Once or twice a week, Narayan Rao Indurkar, a reputed tabla player, would come to accompany him, and after the practice was over, I would serve them tea while they told stories of the old maestros. It was in the aftermath of one of these sessions that, following Narayan Rao's departure, Vimalananda introduced me to music as a sadhana. "What is music?" he asked rhetorically, as I lit him a cigarette. People have been trying since the beginning of time to find out. What is that thing which can please us with its harmony? Sound, when it becomes music, is the only thing which can so possess people that they drop all their inhibitions and, just for a moment in this precious life, they dance. That is the real music. If music be the food of love, play on. Shakespeare, Twelfth Night. I think I remember my Shakespeare. You certainly do. Real music has motion in it, and this is why real saints love music so much. It helps them do their work. Shiva is rhythm, the father of music, and his shakti is the mother, the sounds or notes. The child is Ganesha. The song, rhythm plus notes equals song. Ganesha has an elephant's head, so he never forgets. He remembers everything, just as through song you can remember your true personality. And the musician? He is the bee who carries the pollen from flower to flower, giving rise to creation. And it is he who really enjoys the bliss of this creation. The gods, and especially the avatars, are those celestials who create and who enjoy the music of the spheres. I had read that scientists have learned that the sun is ringing, just like a bell. Probably one component of the physical aspect of the music of the spheres, I thought to myself. The greatest music is written by gandharvas, celestial musicians who incarnate on earth. When a gandharva comes down to earth, he can't remember his previous state, but subconsciously longs to return to it. Gandharvas find it as hard to relate to ordinary humans as humans find it hard to relate to animals, and most Gandharvas lead miserable, misunderstood lives. Many of the great Western musicians were Gandharvas, like Beethoven, Brahms, and Mozart. Even Strauss was a Gandharva, but he was lucky. He had a son to follow him, someone who could understand him. All this emotion comes out in the music. A Gandharva will be a prodigy, a musician right from the beginning, and anything he produces will be good. no matter what variety of music he might learn in his lifetime. Think of Beethoven, who composed some of his greatest work after he became deaf. What concentration he must have had, and what an innate talent. Gopal Nayak was a Gandharva. Music flowed from the very pores of his body. Unfortunately, he lived in the time of the Emperor Akbar, and Tansen, Akbar's chief musician, became so jealous of his prowess, and he conspired to have him killed. Gopal's body was dumped deep in the jungle. When Gopal Nayak's mother learned of her son's murder, she set out to find his bones so that she could burn them. When people asked her, "How will you know whether or not the bones that you find are his?" she would tell them, "He had music right down to his bones. I will know them." As she wandered through the forests of North India, she would hold up her ear to every human bone that she found and would listen to it intently. Finally, one day, she heard faint music coming from one of the bones she held up to her ear, and then she said, "These are my Gopal's bones." She collected them and cremated them. This story may well be apocryphal, but Vimalananda cared nothing for historical accuracy. He was interested only in emotional accuracy, that attention to emotional detail which enables a tale to possess a person, that he drops all his inhibitions and just for a moment in this precious life he weeps from the fullness of his heart. Jim Reeves was a Gandharva. That's why I love his songs. Like many Gandharvas, he had an untimely death. He died in a plane crash. He fell to earth. What a rich baritone voice he had, and the wordings of some of his songs are really beautiful. My favorite song of his is "You Love Me Daddy." I don't know why, but I always cry when I hear that song. It's about a little boy who doesn't always do what his daddy wants him to do, but whose daddy loves him anyway, because the little boy is his own son. No matter how naughty a kid is, its parents always love it. Whenever I hear this song, I think of my own Big Daddy, my mentor. No matter how much I have disobeyed my mentor, he has still loved me, in a way in which no one else has ever loved me. I don't think anyone else will ever be able to love me in the same way. Certainly not a human. In fact, why don't you turn on the cassette player and let me hear "You Love Me Daddy" right now? I did so, and the song brought tears to all four eyes in the room, as we both knew it would. After it was over, Vimalananda was silent for several minutes while the wave of emotion swelled, broke and receded, and then he spoke again. The right kind of music acts as a way of bringing light into one's consciousness. Music is a manifestation of sound, and sound exists wherever there is energy, which means heat, which means light. When a siddha hears music, he can self-identify with it, and with his astral body he can go to wherever the music is. When a sadhu hears music, he is so overwhelmed with emotion that from an exuberance of joy, things begin to happen. And it doesn't matter if it is recorded or live music. Whenever I hear La Paloma, I am always reminded of my guru and the fun we had together. After I hear it a few times, the work just gets done on its own. You've seen it happen, Robbie. You know. People have made millions out of me by playing La Paloma. He looked at me sideways for a moment and then said, almost in a tone a child would use to beg candy from a well-meaning but uncomprehending adult, would you play La Paloma for me just once? He knew that after his heart attack, intense emotion would not do that organ any good. He also knew that Roshni, his foster daughter, was stricter in enforcing this sort of restriction than I was. I knew that he could perfectly well turn the stereo on himself, so I acquiesced and turned on his current favorite of the many versions of La Paloma in his tape collection. This time he did not weep. His face became calmer and clearer, and when he spoke again, he did so resolutely. My senior Guru Maharaj is the shrewdest possible person. Normally no one can get anything out of him. But if you give him the right type of music, he will experience such intense emotional bliss that he will give away the results of years or decades of penance without knowing it. Only when the emotion leaves him will he realize what he has done. Once, he and I and a Mr. Bilmoria hosted Achan Maharaj, a descendant of the court musicians of Nawad Wajid Ali Shah of Oud. Wajid Ali Shah was a ruler who had been a Gandharva. On earth he became a great devotee of Krishna, though he was a Muslim by birth. When his musicians Kalika Prasad and Bindandan played for him, he would go into Bhava Samadhi, emotional highlights, and Krishna would enter his body and dance. Wajid Ali Shah was an expert at the variety of dance known as Kathak, and his expertise was passed down to Achan Maharaj. His son Birju Maharaj is today the greatest Kathak dancer in all of India. So Achan Maharaj had a good pedigree, and we were all looking forward to his dance. When he arrived, he sat down and drank 1.5 bottles of whiskey alone. After quite some time had passed, we asked him if he would kindly consent to show us a little of his artistry, but he snarled, "Who can play percussion for me?" While we were thinking of how to deal with this problem, he drank the last half of the 2nd bottle of whiskey, straight from the bottle. Suddenly my senior Guru Maharaj took me aside and told me to prepare my car for a drive. We drove to a lamp post in South Bombay, under which a Muslim man was standing. The man never said anything and never looked up, but just got into the car. We returned to the house, and when Achan Maharaj was shown his accompanist, he snorted, "No one has yet been born who can accompany me." To make a long story short, not only did that Muslim fellow accompany Achan Maharaj, he began to make Achan Maharaj dance to his own tune. When a percussionist can do that, well, he is something. We all watched amazed, entranced, both by the artistry of Achan Maharaj, who was indeed great, and by the wizardry of that Muslim on the tabla. My senior Guru Maharaj, music lover that he is, was ecstatic. Finally tears came out in Achan Maharaj's eyes, and he said, "I'll pay anything to have this man as my permanent accompanist." But my senior Guru Maharaj said, "He doesn't play for money." All this time the tabla had said nothing, nor had he looked up. Nor did he look up when I dropped him off in front of the same lamp post from which I picked him up. I doubt that he was a human being. The way he was playing, what a night! Silence descended for a few moments and then lifted again. If music can affect its listeners so powerfully, think what it must do for its players. A real musician becomes completely devoted to his or her music. There was one sarangi, meaning Indian fiddle player, I knew who used to carry a bamboo with him everywhere he went. Even when he went to buy vegetables, he would haggle about the price and pay with one hand while constantly practicing fingerings on the bamboo as if it were the neck of his sarangi with the other. This is real dedication to music, the kind of dedication that is necessary in sadhana also. Music should not be an end in itself for you. It should be a sadhana, a means of getting to your goal. Mantras are one way in which to make use of the sound in sadhana. Music is another. The Vedas are mantras set to music, but the Vedas are too far away for most of us, while music is available to everyone. If you are lucky, meaning if you have worked hard in previous lives and God is kind to you, your music will be sufficient to draw God to you. Regardless of whether it is Western style or Indian style music, I interrupted. Of course. Western religious music is very good, but it is very limited. It can only make you realize the love of a servant for his master, or of a child for its father. Indian music can make you realize your deity in any relationship, as servant or father, and also as lover, spouse, or friend, as your own child, as your mother. The greatness of Western music is that many musicians together can cooperate to create a tone poem. An Indian musician paints his complete musical picture with one instrument only. Indians are good solo artists, but large ensembles and orchestras don't thrive here. But then, after all, sadhana should be done alone. In Indian music, each raga, meaning melodic scale, has a specific picture which must be visualized as you play or sing it. If you do it right, the true image of that raga will manifest. For the raga megha, meaning the cloud melody, for instance, you must imagine a cloudy sky and all its background. If you want rain, you play megha in a certain way and rain will come. If you play the Bara Kannada Raga properly, you will see the court of Akbar the Great, Emperor of India. He will be there smoking a little hookah. Then he lifts a flower to his nose. Tansen wrote that raga by using the raga called Kannada and changing it slightly. If you play Kannada, you won't get the same effect because the tonal patterns are different. Isn't it true that one of the meanings of the word raga is passion? And that is what music should be, a matter of passion. Tansen had so thoroughly mastered the raga dipaka, meaning the kindling or igniting melody, that when he sang it at dusk, all the lamps in the palace would light themselves automatically. Once he sang dipaka for too long, and he became overwhelmed with heat. For 6 months he was in agony. Nothing relieved the heat, until in a village he came across a pair of sisters, Tana and Riri, who were experts in megha. When they sang megha for him, the heat finally abated. Even music can be dangerous. And this had something to do with the Surya and Chandra nadis. Naturally, the whole process of music is to help you stimulate your consciousness so that Kundalini can be triggered up. When Tansen overdid it, his prana was affected. Maybe he should have been self-identifying with a deity instead of with a flame, I put it. Maybe so, said Vimalananda, laughing. The great benefit of Indian music is that it helps you self-identify with your deity. Whenever Narsi Mehta, who's a famous poet saint from Gujarat, played the Raga Kedara, meaning the field melody, for example, Lord Krishna would come and dance before him. Can anyone learn to call Krishna with Kedara? No, Kedara is not specific for Krishna. You would not necessarily see Krishna even if you learned to play Kedara perfectly. It is only because Narsi Mehta visualized Krishna dancing whenever he played Kedara that Krishna himself would come to dance. You mean he used Kedara like you use La Paloma, to remind him of someone he loved? Yes, he made Kedara into his sadhana, and it got him into serious trouble one day. A sadhu asked Narsi for some money to go on a pilgrimage. Narsi wanted to help the sadhu, but was broke, so he mortgaged Kedara to a grocer in order to get the money. He mortgaged Kedara? How could he mortgage a raga? He promised never to sing it until the money was repaid. Back then, people's words were their bond. If a man mortgaged his mustache to you, for instance, he would not fail to repay you because he would rather die than have his mustache shaved off. Think of what a tremendous penance this was for Narsi. He mortgaged the thing he loved best, the dance of Lord Krishna, which he could see whenever he played Kedara, to help someone else out. Unfortunately, the sadhu never returned. That in itself would have been bad enough, but meanwhile those people who were jealous of Narsi Mehta's success had been busy poisoning the king's ears against him. Finally the king, Rao Mandalik, called for him and said, I hear that whenever you sing Kedara, Lord Krishna appears. Do it now. Prove to me that you are not a false saint. Narsi Mehta told him, Maharaj, I can't do it. I have mortgaged Kedara. The king of course lost his temper at being refused and said, Well, I see now that you are indeed a false saint. Tonight you shall be tied to a post in front of the Krishna temple so that you can reflect upon your crimes. If Krishna does not save you by tomorrow morning, you will be executed. Now Narsi Mehta was really in a fix. There was nothing for him to do but remember Krishna as he waited for sunrise. But Lord Krishna is never so cruel to his devotees. He loves his devotees more than anything else in the universe. That evening a mysterious person, it was Krishna in disguise, went to the grocer and paid Narsi's debt, and just as day was dawning, the cancelled mortgage note wafted from out of nowhere into Narsi Mehta's hand. Narsi began to sing Kedara. Suddenly the locks on the door of the temple undid themselves. The doors flew wide open, and the necklace which was around the neck of the deity flew through the air and landed around Narsi's own neck. The cords binding him to the stake dropped away. This of course created a big commotion among the people who had gathered to watch Narsi's execution. They started to mob him, to get him to intercede with Krishna for themselves, and he started to run. They pursued him close behind. Outside of town, an Aghori was sitting, enjoying the excitement. As Narsi approached him, frantic, the Aghori said to him, Here, take the shelter off my back. By the time the crowd arrived, there was only the Aghori in sight, and Narsi Mehta was never seen in the world of men. Nada yoga. So any kind of music, Western, Indian, or anything else, can give you results if you are sincere about it and make it into a sadhana, I said. You can. I am sure that if Tukram Maharaj, who lived here in Maharashtra almost 400 years ago, were to come here to Bombay today, and we were to play some nice Western song for him, he would sit quietly and listen and enjoy it, or at least he would look as if he were enjoying it. All the time on the inside he would be hearing his mantra, Rama Krishna Hari, Jai Jai Rama Krishna Hari, Rama Krishna Hari, Jai Jai Rama Krishna Hari, set to the rhythm and melody of the music. In my own case, whenever I ride a train pulled by a steam engine, my own mantra starts to repeat itself in rhythm with the engine. The same was the case when I worked with textile machinery. The noise of the spindles would give me a rhythm. People who are serious about their mantras and put them into their hearts and souls will say them all the time. In fact, I personally find Western music better than Indian music for doing japa, because Western rhythms are simpler than Indian ones, which require more attention to avoid getting lost. Aha! No wonder he enjoyed rock music I brought for him. Of course, there is more to using rhythm in sadhana than merely repeating your mantra to the rhythm of the driving wheels of steam locomotives or to the sound of the electric guitars of Barbados. I think you have heard me play the Ganesh Paran before. Yes, I have. It is a little known rhythm designed to invoke Ganesha. Once, in a small Indian principality named Datia, there was a pankawaj, meaning large two-headed drum, player named Kundav Singh. He was an expert at pankawaj because he worshipped the goddess Durga. In fact, before he would begin to play, he would throw the pankawaj into the air, and Ma would strike it 3 times. Then he would catch it and start to play. The sister of the Maharaja, a young girl of 16 or 17, loved Kundav Singh's music and used to listen to him play whenever she could. Eventually she fell in love with Kundav Singh himself. This enraged the Maharaja, who told her to give him up. When she refused, the Maharaja demanded that Kundav Singh reject the girl. But Kundav Singh said, "She loves and appreciates my art. Why should I tell her to go away?" The Maharaja then said, "All right, since you have disobeyed me, you will be crushed under the foot of an elephant." Kings dispense justice like that. The king invited all the people of the kingdom to the execution as a warning to them not to act foolishly like Kundav Singh had. The elephant was fed wine until its eyes became red absolutely. The Maharaja asked Kundav Singh if he had any last request. He replied, "My pakwaj, which has been my life to me, should be crushed along with me." He was given his pakwaj. As the elephant advanced, Kundav Singh began to play the Ganesh Paran. When it is played properly, Ganesha must come before you. He has no choice. He can't escape. This was a way for Kundav Singh to call his chosen deity. "Mother Durga, please call Ganesha, help me." Durga, who is after all Parvati in another form, and as such is Ganesha's mother, requested her son to aid her devotee. Ganesha agreed and entered the body of the elephant. The elephant then sat down in front of Kundav Singh and began to caress him with its trunk. For half an hour the soldiers prodded, poked, and goaded the elephant, but it refused to attack. Then the Maharaja realized his mistake and said, "Let my sister be given to Kundav Singh, and let the elephant wander freely in my kingdom. Wherever it goes, those lands are to be given to Kundav Singh." And until a short while ago, Kundav Singh's family possessed those lands. Will the Ganesh Paran work for anyone? It will, if you know how to play it properly and if you visualize Ganesha in the right way while you play it. It is a musical sadhana, created especially for the purpose of invoking Ganesha. All the various sadhanas which use music are part of Nada Yoga. In Nada Yoga, you worship the Nada Brahman, the music of the spheres, the Absolute expressed as the sound Om, which emanates from Lord Shiva. If you follow this sadhana to its conclusion, you will finally see that you and the universe are no different, one in all in one. This is what I mean when I say, everywhere I see, everything is me. Anything that has sound has shakti, and all shakti has sound associated with it. The Absolute itself is silent. It has no qualities whatsoever, which is why there is no bija mantra for Lord Shiva. Shiva has no melody to him. He is pure rhythm, the father of music. This is why Shiva is always depicted carrying a damaru, meaning a small two-headed drum, the first musical instrument ever created. Since laya means both rhythm and dissolution, a pralaya, the periodic dissolution of the universe, is merely the return of everything to the pratahama, meaning first laya, the first rhythm, the Absolute. The sound Om is the first sound to arise when creation begins, and it is the last sound to disappear at the time of the pralaya. But even after the melody, the manifested universe, has totally disappeared, its rhythm lingers on, first as Anusvara, then as Bindu. You know that in Indian iconography, Shiva wears a crescent moon on his forehead. Do you have any idea what that suggests? None. In the Sanskrit alphabet, the sign for Anusvara is crescent. I slapped my forehead in disgust. I knew that. He smiled. Here, the crescent moon is an external sign of Shiva's internal consciousness, a sign that his consciousness is full of nada, and that if you worship him, your mind can be filled with nada too, which will enable you to follow that sound back to Anusvara and Bindu, to the source of sound. Oh, is the bull he rides on related to this also? Of course. One of the Sanskrit words for bull, go, also means both sound and sense organ. This indicates that Lord Shiva rides his senses. He permits them to function but controls their movements perfectly, and that he moves with the help of nada. I have told you that Bindu is the source of all sounds, which, in the human, begins with intention and culminates in vocal speech. Laya involves withdrawal of all projections into Bindu, the source. Speech begins with para, progresses through pashyanti and madhyama, and then reaches vaikari, verbal speech. This is the part of parvitri, creation. If you want to use sound to follow the path of nivritri, the path back to the source, you have to begin where you are, in vaikari, and progressively refine your consciousness back through madhyama and pashyanti to para to bindu. Nada Brahman is central to Kundalini Yoga. You may recall that when Kundalini passes through the Anahata chakra, you hear the sound known as Anahata Nada. It may sound to you like Krishna's flute or like Shiva's drum, depending on what sort of sadhana you are doing. It is the same sound interpreted differently by different minds. At first, you hear the sound in your right ear, because the left ear is meant for spirits. Remember this: when you hear someone talking only in your left ear, it is sure to be a spirit. Each individual hears a slightly different nada. There are 108 gatis, meaning gates or modes, of nada. 108 equals 1 plus 8 equals 9. The number of chakras in the body, according to Aghora. Which mode of nada you hear depends on your past karmas, present tendencies, ancestry, and other things as well. The gatis are many, but once Kundalini reaches the top of her course, you hear only one sound, the Nada Brahman, the great sound. All rivers go to the ocean and not vice versa. If the ocean were to go into all the rivers, what would happen to the rivers? They would be finished, and so would be the surrounding land. In sadhana of nada, that ocean is the ocean of bhava, intense emotion. The rivers are the nadis, and the land is the human body. First, you allow your rivers into the sea, and then, if you are meant to return to the embodied existence, the sea will flood the rivers, which will overflow their banks and fill you with an overwhelming divine intoxication, which is bhava samadhi. If you keep at it, you will progress to maha bhava samadhi, which can lead you to nirvikalpa samadhi. Did you know that the story of Krishna and the gopis is actually a step-by-step description of this type of sadhana? No. I'll describe it to you sometime, he said, as we went into the kitchen for lunch. Krishna and the gopis. He described it one evening shortly thereafter over scotch. My family belongs to the Pushti Marga, the spiritual path or Marga, whose greatest exponent was Vallabhacharya, who lived more than 500 years ago. Some people translate Pushti Marga as path of prosperity, and others as path of grace. But when I think of Pushti, I remember a phrase from the Mahamrutanjaya mantra. He looked at me expectantly. You mean Shundagim Pushti Vardhanam? I asked. Yes, the Mahamrutanjaya mantra is addressed to Lord Shiva, the god of death. When you repeat it, you are requesting him to preserve your life and enhance your welfare. Vallabhacharya's philosophy is called Shuddha Advaita, pure non-duality, and follows the principle of one in all in one. Vallabhacharya never taught people to run away from the world and become renunciates. He taught everyone to live a Vedic life, to live in the world without becoming part of the world. So this is also Advaita Vedanta? Most certainly. Thus far, you have been exposed only to the Advaita of Shankaracharya, and the proponents of that school want people to believe that theirs is the only Advaita Vedanta. They like to debate reality. It's only natural, since that is what Shankaracharya did his whole life long. Shankaracharya taught Brahman, Sat, Jagan, Mithya. While the absolute unmanifested is absolutely true, The cosmos, the manifested, is mithya, false. But Vallabhacharya believed, as we Aghoris believe, that since God created the universe and pervades it, the universe is as true as God is, which means that everything is true, since everything is part and parcel of God. Vallabhacharya did not care too much for debate. He preferred to spend his time worshipping Krishna and enjoying the bliss of the nectar of his sweet name and form. I like to call the Pushti Marga the path of sweetness, because of the many sweet songs Vallabhacharya wrote in Sanskrit about his beloved. Probably the most famous of Vallabhacharya's songs is the Madhura Ashtaka, the 8 verses in praise of the Lord's sweetness. Of all deities, only Krishna is Madhu, pure, unalloyed sweetness. In fact, one of his names is Madhava, the sweet one. Why isn't the sect better known? Well, there is a lot of esoteric meaning in their doctrine, which makes it too complicated to explain easily. The Gaudiya math, from which the Hare Krishnas developed, teaches devotion to Krishna in his esoteric external form, and rejects any type of esoteric doctrine. This makes it easier to comprehend. The Pushti Marga believes in both the obvious and the hidden, and that is why I think it is superior, not just because I was born into it. If Westerners were to study Vallabhacharya's teachings, they would really learn something about Advaita Vedanta, about the hidden meanings of Krishna's play, and about how to be sweet. Krishna was something else entirely, said Vimalananda appreciatively, shaking his head in amazement. You know, the word Krishna has 2.5 syllables, and so does the word prema, meaning romantic love. So it is only natural for Krishna's play to be full of prema. But he is no ordinary lover. In fact, he is a true thug, and that's why he is called Chalya, the inconstant one. He will play about with you when you worship him. Some days he will be very close. Other days you won't be able to find him at all. As he plays with you, you will be run through the ringer. You will ache with longing. When he finishes with his play with you, you will be completely tired out. You will cry with all your being. When are you coming to me? When he does come, he will catch hold of your hand and will never let go, not even through millions of births, except that there can't be millions of births for you once he has hold of your hand. Finally, you reach the state of Tatrupata, meaning 2 hearts but 1 beat, and then you are identical with him, if that is what you want. But most devotees of Krishna never want to unite with him. They always want to maintain their own identities, so that they taste his sweetness over and over again, forever and ever. Although he is perfection personified, Krishna still has to come to our world to play about. Do you know why? Because of his beloved Radha. Why does the name Radha sound so sweet to the ear? Turn the word around and you get Dhara, the power to hold or fix. In this case, it is the power to hold Krishna in mind. Everyone who has perfect dharana of Krishna, whose mind is firmly fixed on him, actually calls Krishna to them. He goes wherever he is called. The person who calls may not see or sense him, but Krishna plays about with such a person and causes him or her to do so many things. Krishna is called perfection personified because of a siddhi he had which was far beyond all ordinary siddhis. This siddhi is called kautam, akartam, anatya kautam, kartum, that which is difficult to do but is doable. This refers to the adhibhautika, the mundane world. Akartum, that which is impossible for ordinary beings, which refers to the adhyamika, the spiritual world. Anyatarkartum, that which is beyond both the spiritual and the mundane, and is inconceivable to humans, referring to the adhidaivika, or astral world. This suggests that Lord Krishna has unlimited power in all three realms, which means in the entire cosmos. Krishna has only one fault. He had a habit of promising to do the impossible. He would set up a situation, promise to change it, and then change it, and no one would know what he had done. All the time this was going on, he would stand to one side, admiring his own play. But even Krishna was baffled by Radha. Even he could not understand her. Do you know the depth of Radha's devotion to Krishna? Even Krishna himself could not know it. Her bhakti was so intense that when she was away from Krishna, she felt as if she were being stung by thousands of scorpions all at once. If you want to awaken your Kundalini completely by means of bhakti, your devotion must be equally intense. Otherwise there will never be enough pressure to force Kundalini to rise to your head. Oh. Radha was a gopi, one of the milkmaids with whom Krishna carried on a secret romance. They would work all day long, taking care of their homes and families, and when night fell, they would sneak out and make love to Krishna. Esoterically, Krishna is the soul, the Shaktiman. The gopis are the nadis, the nerves of the astral body. Gopi literally means secret, naturally, because no one else but the sadhaka can know what is going on within his body. The gopis went about their daily work as usual, but their thoughts were only of Krishna. Likewise, a good sadhaka goes about his own daily life while his consciousness is fixed entirely on Krishna. They say that Krishna had 16,000 wives, and of those 16,000, he was fondest of 100. This means that of your 72,000 nadis, 16,000 are predominant, and of those 16,000, 100 are most important in Kundalini Yoga. Of these, 3 are supremely important, and of these 3, Sushumna is the most important. Radha, the most beloved of Krishna, even though she was not even his wife, represents Sushumna. Do you remember when I demonstrated to you and your friend Sergei how through the manipulation of just one nadi in the second toe, a woman can become aroused and even have an orgasm? I remember it well. And so does, I am sure, the woman he demonstrated it on. Can you imagine what would happen if all of your 72,000 nadis were stimulated at once? I can imagine with some difficulty. Well, that is what love of Krishna can do for you. If that ever happens to you, then you will know something about Krishna's leela. Do you know the 2 main Sanskrit words for play? Yes, leela and krida. Krida is unconscious play, like rati krida, meaning love play. Krida is play which is controlled by someone or something other than the being who is playing. In love play, the glands and the genitals do the controlling, not the two people who romance each other. The rishis' play is leela, cosmic pastimes in which they are always in control. This is why we talk about Krishna's leela and Rama's leela, the divine play of Lord Krishna and Lord Rama. Everyone here in India knows when Krishna was born, but how many people know the real significance of Krishna's birth? Only when the causal body begins to burn to ash is Krishna really born. At that time, the Kundalini shakti merges with its lord in the sadhaka's head, and then all the 72,000 nadis begin to dance in the cosmic rhythm. Each nadi vibrates with bliss, thinking that she alone possesses Krishna, but in fact Krishna, being the soul, is everywhere and dances with them all. This is the way the rishis celebrate Krishna's birthday. They enjoy the cosmic dance between Krishna and the gopis in their own bodies, utilizing the Kundalini shakti. This is the real rasa leela of Krishna. So it is at least theoretically possible to experience the rasa leela, meaning the divine dance of intense emotion, even now during Kali Yuga. Let me put it this way. When Narsi Mehta was kicked out of the house by his sister-in-law, he ran in desperation to a Shiva temple and threw himself across the Shiva linga. He lay there for 7 days and nights, forgetting to eat or drink, allowing snakes and insects to crawl over him as they pleased. Finally, Lord Shiva was pleased with his penance and appeared to him to offer a boon. Narsi Mehta told him, "Lord, just give me whatever you like best." Shiva said, "Well, I love best the rasa, leela of Krishna, so I will give that to you." Some people say that Narsi Mehta is the only human in Kali Yuga who has ever seen the real rasa leela of Lord Krishna. Of course, that is too far away for most of us, he added when he saw the faraway look in my eyes. But if you sing of Krishna's exploits with sincere devotion, you can develop intense love for Krishna, which will give you immense bliss. And if you know the esoteric meaning behind the songs, they can send you into ecstasy. In one, a gopi complains to her companion, "On the banks of the river Yamuna, Nanda's son Krishna flung a stone and broke the water pot on my head, which caused all the water to flow out and lighten my load." You know that Indians frequently carry their heavy loads on their heads. The gopis, like most Indian women, used to fetch water from a river in a large pot, which they would carefully balance on their head as they carried them back to their homes. Krishna, to tease them, would throw rocks and break the pots. This is the surface meaning, easily understandable by every woman who has carried a pot of water on her head. Such a song thus helps even illiterate village women to increase their devotion to Krishna. When you sympathize with someone, you self-identify with that person to some extent. If you can sympathize with the gopi in this song, it will be easier for you to relate to Krishna, even if it is only to scold him for breaking the pot. We in India do not believe that devotion has to be respectful and polite at all times. When you're in love with someone, is the course of your romance always smooth? No, it is not. It can't be, if you are really in love. Sometimes you will fight, sometimes you will weep, and so on, if you really love your partner. True devotion means falling in love with your deity. So the gopi in the song seems to complain about Krishna's antics. This is the surface meaning. The esoteric meaning is something quite different. Never take anything here in India only at surface value. Our sacred writings are mostly esoteric, and you should not take them at face value any more than you should take the books of Moses, which are also mostly esoteric, at face value. In this song, the Yamuna River represents the Chandra Nadi, which flows in the left nostril. Bhakti requires the functioning of the Chandra Nadi. The gopis are the other nadis of the body. Krishna is the gopis' lover. He is the soul, that which causes vitality and awareness in the nadis. The soul also causes blood to flow in the arteries and so on. Doesn't your blood flow faster when you see your beloved? The water pot is the head, which is full of so many juices. Juice is not limited to physical juices like hormones. It also includes mental juices like taste and emotions. Because an unenlightened person is selfish, this water is poisonous, poisoned by the venom of selfishness. From the snake of the untamed ahamkara, I tossed in. He nodded, pleased that I was following his meaning. Krishna lightens the gopi of her burden, making her enlightened. After her head is lightened of the venom of the world, the gopi becomes clairaudient and clairvoyant. Then all she wants is to see Krishna. All she wants is to hear is the sweet music of his flute. All she wants to do is dance with him in the divine rasa leela. Once Krishna hid in a tree near the Yamuna and waited for the gopis to come down to bathe. After they had undressed and entered the river, Krishna stole their clothes, and when they realized what he had done, they were too embarrassed to come out. But Krishna insisted, and they all had to emerge from the water and stand before him naked. Naturally, he wanted to see them naked. He was their lover. Yes, before Krishna will dance with the gopis, they must remove all their clothes, the three coverings which obscure Kundalini. The gopis are embarrassed in the beginning. Their egos hesitate to leave familiar self-identifications, but Krishna is firm with them, and eventually they must become naked. Then the Kundalini shakti becomes free to move through the various nadis in the body, and those nadis begin to dance. Krishna and Shiva. He paused to sip his drink. When Kundalini enters the Anahata chakra, you begin to hear the Anahata nada, which will sound either like Krishna's flute or Shiva's drum, depending on which path you follow. Other nadas are also described in the books, but these two are the most important. Let me try to explain to you the differences in nada by describing how Krishna's hair differs from Shiva's hair. Krishna's hair has been compared to a swarm of bees. What does a bee do with its time? All day long it moves from flower to flower, enjoying the nectar at each one. The flower longs for the bee to come and take its nectar. Many flowers, in fact, exist only because of bees. Likewise, Lord Krishna moves from girl to girl, from shakti to shakti, and enjoys each one. They long for him to come to them. They exist only for him. By their longing, they draw him to themselves. Every sincere devotee of Krishna is female, no matter what sex the physical body might be. Bees are always buzzing, and the sound of Krishna's hair is likened by the rishis to the murmuring drone that arises from innumerable intoxicated bees. That buzz is nada. If you use this image to improve your concentration on Krishna, you will begin to perceive this nada when your concentration on Krishna becomes perfect. Lord Krishna has long, flowing, luxurious hair. Lord Shiva's hair is also long, but it is matted into thick locks. What do we West Indians call them? Dreadlocks. Like dreadlocks, his hair, which is called a jata, is compared to a snake because it is long and rope-like, and because if you listen carefully, you may hear a low hiss like a snake's coming from it. This is Shiva's nada. And of course, Shiva wears a snake around his neck. Yes, he does. And yes, Kundalini is the serpent power. Think of this. Shiva wears a cobra around his neck, and Vishnu sleeps on Shisha, a 1,000-headed snake. Just as Shiva allows Kali to dance on him while he remains an inert corpse, a sadhaka who awakens Shiva in himself allows Kundalini to play about on him, but is never tempted to allow Kundalini to identify with any aspect of limited existence. Krishna has also subdued Kundalini in a different way. Once he danced on the head of a venomous serpent called Kaliya in the middle of the Yamuna river, the lunar channel. Krishna used lunar energy to bring Kundalini under his complete control, and then he danced on her. Normally, Ma dances, but Krishna turned the tables on her. This is why Shiva loves Krishna's play. But Krishna could do this only because his mind had been made totally firm by Shiva, which is why Krishna loves Shiva's play. How many people realize that sadhana of Shiva is sadhana of Krishna and vice versa? Shiva cannot do without Vishnu, and Vishnu cannot do without Shiva. It is a mutual bondage of love and necessity. It has to be. They are merely two aspects of the same being. If you follow the path of jnana, you must worship Shiva. In fact, only when you become Shiva will you really know how to worship Krishna. If you follow the path of bhakti, you must worship Krishna, or some other aspect of Vishnu. And when you achieve Krishna, he will teach you about Shiva. That is, if you can still remember Shiva as you gaze at Krishna's beauty. One is the absolute unmanifested, the other is the perfection of manifestation. So on the path of jnana, you actually become Shiva, while on the path of bhakti, you worship but remain separate from Krishna? Yes, it is the difference between non-duality and duality. Shiva contains everything within himself. He is the ultimate jnani. When the god of love came to him to tempt him, he incinerated that god with a single glance from his third eye, the eye of jnana. When there is no lust, no desire, there is no outward movement of energy, and the universe ceases to exist. The god of love was reborn as Krishna's son because Krishna is rasa maka, full of blissful emotion. This is why he dances the rasa leela and why he is called Ananda Ghana, the mass of bliss. He loves all the fineries and luxuries of life. It is all his maya. If you have become tired of maya and want renunciation, you must go to Lord Shiva. No other being in the universe has ever renounced as Shiva has. He has not renounced everything out of pride in his renunciation, but because he loves only Krishna, and always craves to see him. He has renounced because he has given everything to Krishna. How few people understand Shiva. Shiva says, "My Gopala loves beautiful clothes. Let him have them. To remind me of him every moment, I will never wear clothes. Instead, I will wear the ashes of burnt bodies. My Gopala loves jewels. I will wear a cobra to remind me that I have offered all other garlands to him. I will drink poison, all other food I offer to him, and so on. No one wants to come near Shiva in this state, so he plays with spirits. He doesn't even crave devotees. All he craves is Gopala. Once he went so far as to actually turn himself into a gopi so that he could take part in the rasa leela himself. And if he craves Vishnu, don't you think that Vishnu will crave him in return? It is only natural. Vishnu loves his devotees better than he loves anything else in the universe, and Shiva is his ultimate devotee. Do you know how strong Krishna's love for Shiva is? You have probably never thought about it. Even Krishna, perfection personified, died when he met Mahakala face to face. His love for Mahakala was so intense that he could not remain living separate from him. It is this way for everyone. While they're alive, people say Rama Rama or O Krishna. When they're in trouble, they invoke Vishnu and ask for his help. You rarely hear anyone saying Hara Hara, because everyone is afraid of death. But really, their love for Lord Shiva is much stronger than their love for Lord Vishnu. The moment they say Shiva, they have to die. The emotion is so intense. This is how he performs his duty. Shiva is the great giver, and because he sees Krishna in every living being, he gives people unlimited boons when he is properly propitiated. The problem is really not how to propitiate him. The problem is how to get his attention. He is in perpetual samadhi, and it takes quite a lot of intensity to drag him down into the consciousness of his surroundings. To give you an idea of what kind of giver Shiva is, let us just take one verse from the Shiva Mahima Stotra, the hymn to the greatness of Shiva. This verse describes how Vishnu was in the habit of daily offering 1,000 lotuses to Shiva. One day, Shiva stole one of the lotuses as a test. When Vishnu found that one was missing and that his offering might be incomplete, he thought to himself, "My eyes are described by my devotees as lotus eyes. Therefore, they are fit offerings to Lord Shiva." He thereupon plucked out one of his 2 lotus eyes and offered it. Shiva was so pleased by his offering that he immediately appeared and converted the lotus eye into Sudarshana Chakra, the discus which is Vishnu's favorite weapon. Does this story have anything to do with the Vishnu Sudarshana mantra, I wondered? It may. Though pleased that I remembered that reference of many months before, he was not so easily distracted from his point. Here is a part of the esoteric meaning of this verse. Not all, just a part. Vishnu's 1,000 lotuses are in the Sahasrara. He offers them to Shiva daily by offering these internal shaktis to his internal Shiva. One day Shiva took one. What is that one? The ego, Vishnu's own personal shakti. This naked shakti then embraced her Shiva. Remember the difference between shakti and ma. Ma is the maternal aspect and is very sweet. Be prosperous, my child, and so on. Shakti, on the other hand, is the immediate and impartial, like a knife, fast, sharp, cutting. This accounts for the plucking of the lotus. After the loss of his eye of duality, because it was Shakti, Vishnu had but one eye left, the eye of non-duality. Shiva took the Shakti and returned the Sudarshana Chakra. Sudarshana means good sight, clairvoyance. And why a chakra? Ask me that. I tried to ask him that, but he continued to talk. I'm not going to tell you the answer though. What is the use of my telling you everything? There are some things that you have to find out for yourself by experience. Shiva is pure consciousness. When you succeed in propagating Shiva, your own consciousness is transformed into a divine consciousness, so that forever after, as long as you live, you are in the world, but out of it. Like the lotus which grows from the mud, but remains unsullied by it. The lotus is dear to Shiva because it is the very embodiment of discrimination. Ordinary people have minds filled with the heat of passion caused by the friction generated by the mental turmoil due to sankalpa and vikalpa, meaning certainty and uncertainty. Desire and heat are the same thing. Of course, raga means both passion and melody, I said, and in Ayurveda, raga means inflammation. And I thought to myself, it is cognate with the English word rage. Good. Coolness, on the other hand, means lack of mental turmoil. Lord Shiva is always doing penance, destroying the passions day in and day out, just as he destroyed the god of love with a single glance from his third eye. Shiva's terrific penances create heat, and so he needs to be continuously cooled off. This is one reason why he wears a crescent moon on his forehead and a cobra around his neck. Snakes are cool to the touch and are usually quiet and immobile unless disturbed. It is only when you disturb them that they will bite you. The image of Lord Shiva sitting immobile in samadhi in the extreme cold on top of Mount Kailash, observing silence, indicates the complete absence of sankalpa and vikalpa. Lord Shiva's mind is always firm as a rock, and this is why the linga is his symbol. Why does Shiva need to do penance when he has already achieved such a high state? Because he swallowed the terrible hala hala poison, the poison of samsara, which threatened to destroy the world. To protect creation, because he sees Gopala Krishna in all beings and cannot bear to see his Gopala troubled in any way, he drank this poison, and it stained his throat blue. Which is why he is called Nilakanta, meaning the blue-throated one. Exactly. Hala Hala manifested at the time of the churning of the ocean of milk. We will discuss that event someday, but for right now, consider that Ham and Lam are the bija mantras for the Vishuddha and Muladhara chakras respectively. So Hala Hala represents the poison of everything which exists in the lower 5 chakras, meaning everything made up of the 5 elements. Because Shiva holds the poison of samsara above his Vishuddha chakra and never allows it to affect him, he is always above the samsara in perennial samadhi. Ganga, the Ganges river, flows from the celestial regions down into the earth, and Shiva catches her in his matted locks, breaking her fall so that earth is not troubled by the force of her descent. It is well known that bathing in the Ganga can wash away one's evil karmas. The river Ganga was proud of this ability of hers until she learned that it was given to her by a rishi who purified her each day, not for her glory, but to provide coolness to Shiva. This rishi loves Shiva so much that he is willing to take on millions of bad karmas daily, just so Shiva will not be troubled. Only a rishi could be so magnanimous. But there is probably an esoteric meaning to the story also. Of course there is. just as there is with bathing in the Yamuna. Evil karmas are definitely washed away when you take a bath in your internal Ganga, the right nostril. This is the bath of jnana. So finally it comes down to the two rivers, the Ganga and the Yamuna. Yes, Shiva and Krishna, jnana and bhakti, call them what you wish. They are the two paths to the Absolute.